This year's election campaign broke precedent in a lot of ways. Sexual assault, and in particular the treatment of women, emerged as part of a long overdue national conversation. And it added special urgency to an issue that has too often been ignored in criminal justice, the problem of domestic violence. In October, we marked National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but anyone working in the field knows it's a troubling, year-round issue, and especially painful in New York, where despite our dropping crime rates, the toll of domestic violence remains largely unchanged. John Jay College has mounted the Clothesline Project, a special exhibit featuring the voices of victims and the efforts made by city officials to tackle the problem. We invited Cecile Noel, who heads the mayor's office to combat domestic violence, to visit the Clothesline Project.
These are powerful statements, powerful around the depth of both the message around domestic violence and sexual assault, but also really reflecting that this is your campus and these are your students, I would imagine, and their voice in here as being survivors is powerful, which tells you just how widespread this issue really is and how much we need to do to address it.
Commissioner Noel, welcome.
Thank you.
Last month, or earlier this fall, rather, when Mayor de Blasio announced a series of measures with the president on domestic violence, he called domestic violence a public safety menace in every neighborhood in the city. That's a pretty strong statement. Can you deconstruct that for us?
The mayor is absolutely right about that. Domestic violence crosses every ethnicity, every neighborhood. Last year, there were over 270,000 domestic violence incident reports. Those are the reports that police officers take when they are called to a domestic violence incident, so that it clearly is an issue that needs our attention, the citywide attention. Crime has gone down in New York City generally, but domestic violence crime has not gone down at the same rate.
I was going to ask you that. It's sort of jarring that we've seen crime rates plunge, particularly in New York, compared to the rest of the country, and yet domestic violence crime and homicides in particular have not gone down. Why would that be? Why the disconnect?
Not at the same rate, and I really do think that domestic violence crime is different. It is different in many, many ways in terms of the relationship that one has to the person who's perpetrating the violence. These are people that we know, often love, we have a relationship with, and the tendency to let the violence maybe continue because you don't want to report or that there are children in common or things like that, make it often difficult for victims to come forward as often as they should around the violence so that we can step in earlier and really give safety plans and hold the abusers accountable.
Well, is it possible that because more people are willing to report now that we're seeing more domestic crimes appear, domestic violence crimes appear in the records as opposed to before?
That's absolutely true. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and we've come a long way in terms of assuring folks that they can come forward and report, and that, you know, police officers will take that. They won't tell someone to go walk around the block and cool off, that they will actually take the report and that there's services available to survivors to help them leave that situation.
I want to get into more specifically what the mayor announced in October, but just a question on that. Is it I mean, we've seen a lot of issues and stories about sex crime, sexual assault appear over this fall, particularly during the campaign. I mean, are women, or perhaps I should say domestic violence survivors, more empowered now, do you think, because of all the publicity? Or does it force them to go further into hiding and say, I'm not going to talk about this because it's too embarrassing?
Well, I know that the more that we do to encourage survivors to come forward, the better our entire society will be, the better our city will be, because there are services. So I believe firmly that the more that we let survivors know that there are places where they can get help, the easier it will be for them to come forward.
So what are the new services that were announced? So, and how do they add on to what's already been around?
Mayor de Blasio and the First Lady made an announcement about two new initiatives that are really going forward. The first is to propose legislation to really amend the paid sick leave law to include paid safe. So the sick days that one acquires under paid sick could be used for issues related to domestic violence. So could be used, let's say, because you need to go to court and get an order of protection. Could be used because you need to move your family to a safe place. So that the legislation, once it goes forward, will really afford victims and survivors the opportunity to not have to choose between, oh my goodness, I can't do this because I will lose days of work and I won't be paid, over their safety. So they won't have to choose between employment and safety. They can take care of those safety needs and be assured that their job will not be in jeopardy and that they can use those days for this purpose.
And how do they take advantage of it? Is there a counselor they go to, or what's going to be set up in terms of the mechanics of
the mechanics
applying for this?
already exist under the current paid sick legislation. All we are doing here is informing employers that in addition to you having a cold or having to take care of a child, that the days can also be used for issues related to domestic violence.
And this will affect all city employees and all employees, in fact, in New York City.
Exactly, who are currently covered under paid sick.
So not necessarily government employees, but everyone,
Right.
private employees.
Mm-hmm. Who are currently covered under that legislation. And the second piece that the mayor announced is that New York City currently has family justice centers. And these are centers that are in every borough that provide many, many services under one roof. We are co-located with the district attorney's office and provide civil legal services, counseling for children, free of charge, without and anyone can come in regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation. And so within that rubric of services, we will now also be putting in housing services. So legal assistance for survivors related to housing issues, to really press the issue around not necessarily having the survivor leave with children in tow and go, let's say, to a shelter or go to someone else's home. But how can we preserve that apartment? How can we keep that particular victim, survivor, safe in the home while working through whatever housing laws are needed to be able to do that?
So let's go a little bit further into that part of it. I was astonished to read that domestic violence is one of the key drivers in homelessness in the city. In October, we were at a record high of 60,000. It's continuing high, and of course, this is the season when everybody thinks about homelessness post-Thanksgiving, Christmas coming up, and the weather turning cold. But that's pretty astonishing because you wouldn't think, for all the other factors that lead to homelessness, whether evictions or everything else, that domestic violence enters into it.
It's true, and it's been a driver for a very long time. Often what happens to survivors is that in order to be safe, they need to leave their home and go into shelter. Which is very difficult for the family. There are domestic violence shelters, and there are also homeless shelters. And actual domestic violence survivors are in both. This piece of housing, we hope, will also be a preventative measure so that maybe we can hang on to the housing. How can we make this victim safe in the home? What do we need to do? And how can we also use housing laws to protect the survivors, tenancy, where possible?
Unfair, counterintuitive that the victim of domestic violence, rather than the perpetrator, is the one who leaves the house.
We agree. And Mayor de Blasio and the First Lady absolutely agree. And so what we are about now is looking at ways of minimizing that, of looking at creative ways both here, nationally, of bringing those models here that say maybe we need to think about this differently. Maybe we need to be looking at other things that will allow for survivors to be able to stay in that home with children, but hold on to that tendency and remove the abuser, remove the perpetrator of the violence.
And this particularly affects, since we're talking about homelessness, people in public housing. If you're sitting in a private house or an apartment, it's a little bit more difficult to oversee.
That's right. And that's what we are. That's what we believe, that by infusing the legal expertise here, we can help to hold on to some of that housing. We can help to keep survivors safe.
Another piece of the package, which was mentioned in October, was the involvement of the police, the NYPD. They announced as part of it that they would step up, as I understand it, their intervention efforts in terms of domestic violence victims. I mean, has the problem been that the police have not been aggressive enough or trained enough to deal with domestic violence? I mean, I know that one of the key factors in deaths of police officers around the country has been in domestic violence cases. So there's obviously a problem there in terms of safety for police. What does the new package offer in terms of stepped up police involvement?
What the mayor announced really is about ensuring that, one, that our police officers are trained, which over the years we've been doing a phenomenal job in really helping police officers to understand domestic violence as an issue, understand what it is to go in the home and really intervene. But what we are also doing now, and I think much more aggressively, is ensuring that police officers are able to follow through on the arrest warrant, to follow through on removing an abuser when you have, let's say, an order of protection that excludes the abuser from the home, and he shows up at the home, to be there to actually effectuate that arrest at that time. And it's a combination of using all of the new resources that have really been put into the police department to ensure that that can be followed up on, as well as providing the survivor in the home with, here's a card, here's some resources, please follow up. Police officers now are doing home visits after the incident has occurred to check on survivors and make sure that they're okay.
So what's different now? I mean, that's interesting that it steps over the line of what you think is normal policing.
That's right.
And police will often say, well, we're not social workers. We're not people who are going to go in and be mediators in a domestic conflict, and they're not trained to do that. So what's different? What really can police do in terms of not necessarily preventing domestic violence, but intervening to prevent worse problems from arising?
Intervening by absolutely identifying the abuser, holding that abuser accountable, removing that person from the household within the parameters of the law and what that allows, following up on calls where an abuser has violated an order of protection to ensure that that abuser can be arrested, and also being equipped with resources. We don't expect them to be social workers, but we do expect that when they see this, they can have a card. They can say to someone, why don't you follow up with a family justice center tomorrow morning, because that's equally important.
So doesn't it begin with them taking it seriously? I mean,
That's
have
right.
police taken this seriously in the past?
I think they take it much more seriously now, and with the support of the mayor and first lady, I know they're taking it very seriously, along with our police commissioner, who really believes that this is a very important issue, and he wants to see the numbers go down here, much like they have done in other areas.
I mean, we do have a domestic violence unit in the
That's
NYPD
right.
now, and it's headed by a woman, in fact. So since most of the domestic violence victims are women, would it make more sense to have more women involved, more female police officers involved in intervening in these disputes?
I don't necessarily think so. I think women bring a great perspective, but I firmly believe that male officers can understand this issue and equally intervene and respond in caring, thoughtful ways. And with proper training, they have been. The domestic violence police officers come in all stripes, and we have men and we have women, and they are compassionate and responsive and caring. And so I don't necessarily think that falls to one gender. I think we can all be. We can all express that.
This
and
is
have that.
such a difficult issue. I mean, you're the third commissioner since the
Yes.
MOCDV, the Mayor's Office to Combat
Yes, I
Domestic
am.
Violence, was formed in 2001. I mean, it's got to be very difficult to deal with emotionally, psychologically. I mean, particularly with your staff and yourself as well. I mean, has it been an uphill fight to do this? What drives you to keep going in it?
What drives me to keep going in it is to ensure that survivors are able to get the services, that children who are in that household are able to get the services, and to understand that if we are ever to really eradicate this issue, we have to bring it out in the open. We have to think creatively about the solutions that we bring. Everyone has to understand that they have a role to play in solving this. District attorneys, police officers, judges, social workers, you name it. We all have a role to play. And the general public also has a role to play in understanding that it's not acceptable to hear it going on next door and not do anything. That we all need to come forward. We all need to stand up and say this is unacceptable and we want this to stop. And understand that there's someone next door, a friend, a neighbor, relative, who could really benefit from the services that we have available.
That's a very personal thing to ask. If you hear something in your apartment next door going on, you may be afraid of reporting it to a policeman. What do you do? I mean, what do you suggest that folks who are aware of domestic violence happening actually do?
Clearly, if you know anyone is in danger, domestic violence or otherwise, you call 311. You call 911, excuse me. You call 911, you make the call, you get the police officer there in terms of life or death, emergency, that's the call, 911. But beyond that, for services, I encourage everyone to know the services in their community. There are many domestic violence providers in every community. There are family justice centers across the city that individuals can get services. So a key is for everyone to understand that help is available. And that person who's experiencing it might not take that from you now, but being able to just let them know that there are services available and how they can access them would be terrific. Even calling 311, but being able to say to someone, I think that maybe something's going on. Are you okay? Are you okay? Is there any way that we can help?
Why is this important to you? Why is it? It's a personal fight for you as well.
It is a personal fight for me. I've done this work for a long time, and I've seen the devastating effect of domestic violence on the individuals that I've worked with over the years, on children, on families, and I know the resilience of survivors if they are able to just get the services and help that they need. They are some of the most resilient people I've ever worked with in my life. And they, again, once they leave, are able to rebuild their lives and start over. Think about you or I starting over today from scratch, from almost nothing, and rebuilding your life. And survivors are doing that every day. And there has to be a way for us, one, to have them come forward, have the resources that they need, but also hold abusers accountable.
One of the worst elements, as far as I can see, of the whole domestic violence issue is its impact on kids. And what's worse with that is that it's often said that many kids who are victims of domestic violence become perpetrators themselves. That's often I don't know if that's an urban myth or if there's some truth in that.
There is truth in that. We know that statistically research has been done, and individuals or children who experience the violence are far more likely to become either abusers or victims themselves. And that's an issue that our office has.
How do you break that cycle?
And that's an issue that our office has always has also been working on. We have our Healthy Teen Relationship Academy. And our Healthy Relationship Academy is really prevention at the heart of it. We believe strongly and are committed to the fact that if we can help young people understand healthy behaviors now, that they are less likely to become abusers or victims in the future. And so we have been working with schools, after-school programs, anywhere where we can find young people and talk to them about healthy relationships. We have peers who are talking to other peers, which is a strong model within itself. I'm much older. I doubt that they'll want to come and hear me, but I think an 18 or 16-year-old is much more likely to respond to an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old
But that's
than
really
they are
difficult
to me.
when there's so much else out in society
That's
that
right.
goes the other way. We're very violence-oriented as a society. You see media, you see songs, you see films, which don't necessarily hold violence up as a good thing, but it's all around us.
That's right.
That's hard to compete with, right?
It is hard to compete with, and one strength of the program is the fact that this is about young people talking to other young people and calling out the behaviors and saying, no, this is wrong, or being able to say, you know, I was in that situation, and this is how I addressed it, and this is how you can address it. And understanding that love does, or emotion, or some of the behaviors that they are exhibiting now are not always equal to good, loving relationships.
What do we know about the factors that contribute to domestic violence? I mean, it's mental health issues, obviously. Presence of guns, I would imagine, makes it
Yes.
worse because we're seeing homicides as a result of it. But what else do we know about what drives this? Is it economics? Is it
Absolutely. You know, there are financial issues there, and as you said, psychological issues involved in driving the abuse. It could be sexual issues as well that are wrapped up in how the abuse presents itself. And that's what we see all the time in the survivors who come to us.
I mean, October was National Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
That's right.
It's kind of frustrating. It's only 1 month, right? I mean,
But
we're now 2 months in.
we do it every day of the year. We do it every day of the year, and although we have 1 month to recognize the issue and almost draw attention to it, we should keep these things going all year long. And my office is about making sure that happens all year long.
So what's next? What's next? What do you have on your plate?
What do I have on my plate? So we are expanding our Healthy Relationship Academy. We're doing many, many more trainings. We also have a Policy and Training Institute that provides trainings to other city agency, not-for-profit providers, and we're looking at doing wonderful conferences, and one that we just did with you, around looking at the media, which is, I think, such an important piece of what we need to do better, what we collectively need to do better. The reporting on domestic violence crime in general needs to be better. We need to name it. There's a whole process of naming.
Name it and shame it.
Yes, yes. And we need to do that better. So it's a wonderful partnership that we are now starting with John Jay.
I could be wrong on this, but I don't know of any other city that has a mayor's office to combat domestic violence. How do we stand in relation to other large cities in the country?
You know, I can't honestly say with certainty that no other jurisdiction has one, but I would strongly believe that we were probably the first city, and I know under the guidance of the current administration, we are the most progressive. We are the most progressive, the most forward-leaning on this issue of any other major city, and I believe if Mayor de Blasio and First Lady have their way, we'll be the first city to absolutely eradicate it.
Eradicate it.
It's a strong word.
You think that's actually, that's a very strong word.
It's a huge word. It's a huge word, but that's okay. It's a great word for us to strive towards.
Is that your
right?
goal? You think you can
Why
eradicate?
not? Why not? Why not? We've driven down crime. I was at a presentation just a few days ago where someone said, imagine 1988, you know, when crime was at the height. We had over 1,000 murders,
Yes.
right, that year. And look at where we are now. Look at where we are now as a big city.
Well, we still don't know why we've gone down so fast, but a big part of that was more police, different police strategies.
Right.
But with domestic violence, is it a question of more funding, a question of different attitudes? Do we have enough funding or personnel to deal with it at local neighborhood levels?
I think it's a question of all of that, and that's what my office really seeks to do, is to really ask those hard questions and lobby where needed for the resources to really address it. But recognizing that domestic violence, just like I think crime in general, has been all of our responsibility to bring it down, right? It's been a citywide push, and it's a citywide push around domestic violence as well.
So how often do you talk to the mayor about this? I mean, is this something that you're seeing him every day about? I mean, how much of a priority?
I don't necessarily, I don't see the mayor every day, but I know that he thinks about it every day. And I know it's a very important issue to him, and I just want to do the best job I can for him in ensuring that we really drive this issue down in every way.
Commissioner, thanks so much for being with us
Thank
today.
you. Thanks. Pleasure.
Every day, the New York Police Department gets roughly 800 domestic violence calls. Most observers believe that's still only a small indication of how widespread the problem is. But authorities can't act without information, and we can all play a role. If you are aware of domestic violence, or if you're a victim yourself, please call 911 in an emergency or the 24-hour domestic violence hotline at 1-800-621-4673. That's 1-800-621-HOPE. I'm Steve Handelman. Thanks for watching. See you next time.